April 9th, 2019, 7:30 p.m. Summerlin Hospital Medical Center, Las Vegas. Paramedics burst through the emergency room doors, wheeling a small body under white sheets. 5-year-old Lariah Davis, her skin already cold to the touch, her body rigid. The medical team works frantically, but they know, everyone knows, this child has been gone for some time. In the waiting room sits a man, tall, muscular, athletic. His name is Cier Wood, former college football star, former NFL running back, the man who made the 911 call. Within hours, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police will place him in handcuffs, and the investigation will reveal something so disturbing that even veteran detectives will struggle to comprehend it. This 5-year-old girl didn't fall. She didn't have an accident. Over 100 bruises covered her tiny frame, 20 broken ribs, a lacerated liver, internal bleeding throughout her organs, contusions on her heart, her diaphragm, her connective tissue. The question that would haunt everyone: how does a former professional athlete, a man who once stood on the threshold of NFL glory, become responsible for the death of a child? This is the story of Cierre Wood. But before we understand the monster, we need to understand the man. And to understand the man, we need to go back to where it all began. Before we begin, please subscribe to True Crime Zone, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. Oxnard, California, Santa Clara High School. The year is 2008. Cier Wood wasn't just good at football. He was exceptional. As a senior, he rushed for 1,632 yards and scored 20 touchdowns. But numbers only tell part of the story. Scouts from across the nation descended on this California high school to watch a young man who seemed destined for greatness. ESPN ranked him as the 25th best overall player in the nation. Sporting News called him the 10th best overall player and second best running back in country. College coaches dreamed of having him on their roster. USC wanted him. UCLA courted him. California offered scholarships. But Cier Wood chose Notre Dame, the University of Notre Dame, one of the most storied programs in college football history. The Golden Dome, the Fighting Irish, Touchdown Jesus. For a young man from California, this was a pinnacle. This was validation that he belonged among the elite. His freshman year, 2009, Wood redshirted. He watched. He learned. He prepared. Then came 2010. After the starting running back suffered an injury, Wood stepped in and started the final 6 games of the season. He recorded 603 yards on 119 carries and 3 touchdowns. The coaching staff saw potential. The fans saw flashes of brilliance. But it was his junior year, 2011, that would cement his legacy at Notre Dame. Would rush for 1,102 yards on 217 carries with 9 touchdowns, becoming the 16th Notre Dame running back in history to top 1,000 rushing yards in a single season. Game after game, he delivered. Against Miami, he exploded for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Against BYU, 114 yards. The young man from Oxnard was living his dream. Notre Dame fans chanted his name. Sports analysts predicted a bright professional future. Everything seemed perfect, but perfection, as we would learn, was an illusion. In 2012 Wood's senior season, something was wrong. Wood was suspended for the opening 2 games of the season for violating team rules. The details were never fully disclosed to the public, but whispers traveled through the locker room. Discipline issues, questions about his judgment. When he returned, he shared carries with classmate Theo Riddick. In those 11 games, he rushed for 742 yards on 114 carries and 4 touchdowns. Good numbers, but not the explosive performance that had defined his junior year. Still, in January 2013, Wood made a decision that would alter the trajectory of his life. He chose to forego his final year of eligibility and enter the NFL draft. The dream was within reach, or so he thought. April 2013, the NFL draft. Round after round, Cier Wood waited. Round 1, round 2, round 3. His phone remained silent. Round 4, 5, 6. Still nothing. Round 7, the final round. came and went. Undrafted. The word stings differently when you've been told your entire life that you're special. When scouts have traveled thousands of miles to watch you play. When major publications rank you among the best in the nation. But the Houston Texans saw something. Hours after the draft concluded, they signed Wood as an undrafted free agent. This was his second chance, his opportunity to prove everyone wrong. Training camp, August 2013. Wood worked relentlessly. In a preseason game against the Dallas Cowboys, he broke out with a 107-yard performance. The coaches noticed. He made the 53-man roster. For 3 games, Cier was an NFL running back. 3 games where he rushed for just 9 yards on 3 carries. But he was there. He wore the uniform. He stood on NFL sidelines. Then came October 20th, 2013. Kansas City. The Texans were 2-4, struggling through a nightmare season. They traveled to Kansas City to face the Chiefs. But 3 players, running back Cierre Wood, linebacker Willie Jefferson, and defensive end Sam Montgomery, never made it to the game. Sources indicated the violation occurred due to marijuana use at the team hotel the night before the game. All 3 rookies were sent home Sunday morning, well before kickoff. Monday, October 21st, 2013, Wood and the other 2 rookies were released for violating team rules. His NFL dream? Over in 3 games. 12 yards of total offense. No touchdowns. No legacy. Just a career that ended before it truly began. The next 5 years tell the story of a man unable to find his place. The New England Patriots signed Wood to their practice squad in November 2013, then released him in December. The Baltimore Ravens signed him to a reserve future deal in January 2014, then released him in August. The Seattle Seahawks signed him to their practice squad in November 2014. The Buffalo Bills signed him in August 2015, released him in September, then re-signed him to their practice squad. 5 teams in 2 years. Never more than a practice squad player. Never truly wanted. Never trusted. In 2015, while briefly on the Bills' active roster, Wood tore his ACL. His NFL career was effectively over. He moved to the Canadian Football League. The Hamilton Tiger Cats signed him in March 2017. 2 months later, he was traded to the Montreal Alouettes. In May 2018, they released him. By 2018, the Golden Boy from Notre Dame was unemployed. No team wanted him. The athletic gifts that once seemed boundless had been squandered. He moved to Las Vegas and took a job as a healthcare associate. The roar of the crowd had been replaced by the silence of a life that hadn't lived up to its promise. And it was in Las Vegas, in this new life far from the spotlight, that Cier would meet Amy Taylor. Amy Taylor, 25 years old, certified nursing assistant, single mother to 5-year-old Lariah Nicole Lamont Davis. Lariah, whose name itself meant precious gift, lived between 2 worlds. Her father, Denon Davis, lived in Central California. Her mother, Amy Taylor, lived in a Pecole Ranch apartment on the west side of Las Vegas. There was a custody battle. Denon Davis wanted full custody. He saw things that worried him. But the legal system moved slowly, and before any resolution could come, Amy Taylor introduced her daughter to her new boyfriend, Cier Wood. Taylor and her daughter had moved in with Wood and his young daughter less than 2 weeks before April 9th, 2019. 2 weeks. 14 days. That's how long it took for this relationship to turn fatal. Before we continue deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And please subscribe to True Crime Zone, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue. What happened inside that apartment during those 2 weeks remains one of the most disturbing aspects of this case. Wood told police he believed Lariah was overweight. He stated he was trying to get her on the right path due to her being chunky. Think about that for a moment. A 5-year-old child, barely out of toddlerhood, and a grown man, a former professional athlete, decided this kindergartner needed to lose weight. Police said it would make Lariah run sprints in the apartment, do sit-ups, and perform wall squats. He called it learning through fun. But there was nothing fun about it, nothing educational. This was torture disguised as discipline. Wood told police he initially spanked Lariah when she misbehaved, but Taylor disapproved, so he adopted exercise as discipline. Amy Taylor, for her part, had her own method. Taylor told detectives that she sat on the girl while disciplining her about a week before her death. A grown woman, sitting on a 5-year-old child. Taylor admitted that Lariah began complaining of chest pains about a week before her death, after Taylor sat on the girl's chest and stomach to punish her. Chest pains. A 5-year-old complaining of chest pains. And still, the abuse continued. The apartment complex on West Charleston Boulevard was just another building in Las Vegas. Neighbors heard nothing unusual. To the outside world, this was just another family trying to make it work. But inside, a nightmare was unfolding. Tuesday afternoon, Amy Taylor went to the grocery store. Cier Wood was alone with Lariah. According to his statement to police, Lariah refused to learn her letters and numbers, so it decided she needed to exercise. Sit-ups. Sprint across the apartment. More sit-ups. Wood told investigators that during one of the sit-ups, Lariah fell backward and hit her head on the carpeted floor. She became unresponsive. At 7:30 p.m., Wood called 911. When paramedics arrived, they immediately knew something was catastrophically wrong. Her body appeared cold and stiff. They rushed her to Summerlin Hospital Medical Center. Doctors worked frantically, but Lariah Lamont Davis was pronounced dead. The Clark County Coroner's Office would later reveal the horrifying truth. Lariah had at least 100 bruises on her body. She had 20 broken ribs. She had a lacerated liver and contusions on other vital organs. The autopsy report noted she had internal bleeding, skull injuries, and bruises to her heart, diaphragm, and connective tissue. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a fall during sit-ups. This was systematic, prolonged abuse that had culminated in death. April 10, 2019, one day after Lariah's death, Wood and Amy Taylor were arrested by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department on charges of first-degree homicide and child abuse. At the hospital, both had been uncooperative. Initially, Wood and Taylor tried to leave the hospital. They knew what they had done. During interrogation, their stories began to unravel. Wood described Lariah as clumsy and said her behavior worsened as his 6-month relationship with Taylor progressed. He stated that although her conduct irked him to the point that he wanted to snatch her up by her legs, he couldn't because it wasn't his daughter. Think about that statement. A grown man admitting he wanted to violently grab a 5-year-old by her legs because her behavior irritated him. Taylor told detectives that she and Wood were the only two people who could have killed the child, stating, "So it had to be one of us." Both pointed fingers at each other. Both tried to minimize their involvement, but the evidence told a clearer story. The judge expressed shock at the severity of injuries, stating, "Once you've seen them, you can't ever unsee them," referring to photographs of Lariah's injuries. The photos were not made public. They were too disturbing. Even hardened law enforcement officials struggled with what they witnessed. Prosecutors requested $1 million bail for both defendants. The judge ordered them held without bail. Amy Taylor sobbed in court, would remain stoic. June 25, 2019, 2.5 months after Lariah's death, the Clark County Grand Jury convened to review the evidence gathered by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Prosecutors presented photographs, medical examiner reports, autopsy findings, witness statements, the 911 call recording, interrogation videos. The grand jury reviewed everything. Every bruise, every broken rib, every lie told by the defendants, every moment of that child's final 2 weeks on earth. Their decision was unanimous. Cier Wood and Amy Taylor were indicted on murder and 20 felony child abuse charges. 20 separate counts of child abuse. Let that number sink in for a moment. 20 distinct charges. Each count represented documented instances of torture, neglect, and cruelty inflicted upon a defenseless child. Each count told a story of pain that Lariah endured while the two people who should have protected her instead became her tormentors. These weren't abstract legal technicalities. These were specific acts of violence. the forced exercise sessions that left her exhausted and injured, the incidents where her mother sat on her small chest and stomach, the punishments for not learning her letters quickly enough, the sprints across the apartment until her legs gave out, the sit-ups that caused internal injuries, the wall squats that a 5-year-old body was never meant to endure, the systematic starvation disguised as weight management, the bruises that accumulated day by day, injury by injury, until her small body simply couldn't survive anymore. This child should have been protected. She should have been safe in her own home. She should have been playing with dolls and coloring books, watching cartoons, eating snacks without someone calling her chunky. She should have been learning her ABCs at her own pace, without fear of punishment. She should have been running and jumping because it was fun, not because an adult was using exercise as torture. The case was assigned to the Clark County District Court. Trial dates were set, then postponed, then set again. The legal system, with all its procedures and protocols, moved forward. Discovery deadlines, pretrial motions, competency evaluations. Defense attorneys requested continuances. Prosecutors gathered additional evidence. Judges reviewed motions and made rulings. Then March 2020 arrived. COVID-19 shut down the world. Courts closed their doors. Jury trials were suspended indefinitely. Justice, which already moved slowly, ground nearly to a halt. Months became a year. A year became 2 years. 2 years became 3, then 4. Wood and Taylor remained in the Clark County Detention Center, held without bail. They waited. Their attorneys filed more motions. They waited some more. But through all those years of legal delays and pandemic disruptions, one person never stopped fighting. One person refused to let his daughter's death fade into just another court file number. Lariah Davis, Lariah's father. At a hearing in 2019, Davis stood before the court. In his hands, he held a photograph of his daughter. Not the crime scene photos that the judge and prosecutors had seen. Not the autopsy images that documented her injuries. Just a picture of Lariah being Lariah. Smiling, alive, happy. He showed that picture to everyone in the courtroom. He wanted them to see her as he saw her, as she truly was. She had so many people that she touched, and she's only 5, Davis said, his voice breaking with emotion. Her not to be alive and how much life she had. That's the tragic thing about it. He paused, struggling to find words for a loss that is no adequate language. She can't be there no more. I can't call her no more. Never thought I'd bury my child at 5 years old. 5 years old. A kindergartner who should have been losing her first tooth, learning to tie her shoes, making friends on the playground. A little girl who had just celebrated her birthday in February 2019, less than 2 months before her death. She had opened presents, blown out candles, made wishes that would never come true. Now she was gone, buried, a gravestone where a childhood should have been. April 2024, 5 years after Lariah drew her last breath. 5 years of legal maneuvering, motions, and delays. Both defendants now face stark realities. Prosecutors had built an overwhelming case. The autopsy evidence was undeniable. The photographs were damning. Their own statements to police contradicted each other and revealed their guilt. If this case went to trial, a jury would see everything. Every injury, every lie, every moment of torture inflicted on that child. The prosecution had made clear their intentions. They were seeking the maximum penalties. For murder in Nevada, that could mean the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. Either way, Wood and Taylor were looking at dying behind bars. So they made calculations. Cold, strategic decisions about their own survival. Cier Wood's attorneys approached prosecutors first. They negotiated. They bargained. They reached a deal. Wood agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder and felony child abuse. But there was a catch. He entered what's called an Alford plea, a legal mechanism that allows a defendant to formally admit guilt in court and accept prison time while simultaneously maintaining their innocence. It's a legal contradiction, a way to accept punishment without accepting responsibility. Even in his guilty plea, standing before a judge, Wood refused to speak the truth. He wouldn't admit what he had done. He acknowledged that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict him at trial. He admitted that a reasonable jury would likely find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but he wouldn't say the words. Wouldn't look anyone in the eye and admit he had killed a 5-year-old child. Amy Taylor followed with her own plea agreement. Same charges, same legal maneuvering, same refusal to fully own what she had done to her own daughter. The trial that the community had anticipated, that Lariah's family had prepared for, would never happen. There would be no jury selection, no opening statements, no parade of witnesses describing the horrors, no cross-examination, no closing arguments, no public airing of every horrific detail in open court, just plea deals, sentencing hearings, and the quiet closing of a case that deserved to be heard. On Tuesday, August 13th, 2024, Regional Justice Center, Las Vegas. Clark County District Court Judge Jacqueline Bluth presided. Lariah Davis, Lariah's father, delivered his victim impact statement. Davis wept as he addressed the court. Chief Deputy District Attorney Dina Renetti addressed the court about the severity of the crimes. Your heart absolutely breaks and you think, how can somebody be so cruel? Renetti stated. Wood's attorney, Thomas Erickson, attempted to shift blame. Erickson argued that his client did not inflict the injuries that led to Lariah's death, but should have protected the child more. He blamed Amy Taylor for sitting on the girl's chest and holding her down. But the judge had seen the evidence. She had reviewed the photographs. She had read the autopsy reports. She understood what had happened in that apartment. Judge Jacqueline Bluth sentenced Wood to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years for the murder charge. She also ordered him to serve between 28 months and 6 years for the child abuse charge. The sentences were to be served consecutively. Additionally, the judge ordered Wood to pay for Lariah's funeral expenses. Amy Taylor received a similar sentence. Taylor was sentenced in July to life in prison with the possibility of parole for the murder charge and 8 to 20 years on the abuse charge. Let's review what we know. A 5-year-old girl named Lariah Davis experienced systematic torture in her final days. She had 100 bruises on her body, 20 broken ribs, a lacerated liver, contusions on her heart, diaphragm, and connective tissue, skull injuries, internal bleeding throughout her small frame. She was forced to run sprints in an apartment, forced to do sit-ups until she couldn't continue, made to do wall squats because a former professional athlete thought she was chunky. Her mother sat on her chest and stomach as punishment. She complained of chest pains days before her death. And on April 9th, 2019, her body gave out. 2 adults who should have protected this child instead tortured her to death. The system that was supposed to protect Lariah failed. Child Protective Services had received 1 complaint about Amy Taylor in December 2018, but the complaint did not indicate any abuse or neglect according to county officials. 1 complaint, for months before Lariah's death, and nothing was done. Her father was fighting for custody. He saw warning signs. But the legal process moved slowly and time ran out. How does a young man who once had everything turn into a child killer? Cier Wood's story is not a justification. It's not an excuse, but it is a cautionary tale. We saw a talented athlete who squandered every opportunity, who violated team rules at Notre Dame, who was released by the Houston Texans for misconduct, who bounced between 5 NFL teams in 2 years, who couldn't maintain a spot in the Canadian Football League. We saw a pattern of poor judgment, of inability to control impulses, of refusal to follow rules or accept consequences. But millions of people struggle with disappointment. Millions face unfulfilled dreams. They don't torture children. The truth is simpler and more horrifying. Cier Wood is a violent man who found a vulnerable victim, a 5-year-old child who couldn't defend herself, who had no escape, who trusted the adults in her life to keep her safe. Amy Taylor is equally culpable. She was Lariah's mother. Her biological responsibility was to protect her daughter above all else. Instead, she participated in the abuse. She sat on her own daughter's chest as punishment. She allowed her boyfriend to torture her child. Both chose violence. Both chose cruelty. Both chose their own twisted sense of control over the life of an innocent child. In 2034, if he serves his minimum sentence, Cier Wood will be eligible for parole. He'll be 43 years old. He'll have the opportunity to argue he's been rehabilitated, that he deserves a second chance at freedom. Lariah Davis will still be dead. She'll never turn 6 or 16 or 26. She'll never graduate from kindergarten, never learn to ride a bike, never experience her first crush, her first heartbreak, her first success. Her father, Denon Davis, will visit her grave for the rest of his life. He'll celebrate birthdays that will never happen. He'll grieve holidays without his daughter. He'll carry the weight of what-ifs, and if onlys until the day he dies. This case exposes critical failures in how we protect children. Child Protective Services received a complaint but deemed it information only and conducted no investigation. Warning signs were missed or ignored by neighbors, family members, and authorities. A custody battle that might have saved Lariah's life moved too slowly through the legal system. 2 adults with documented histories of poor judgment and impulsive behavior were allowed unchecked access to vulnerable children. These aren't abstract policy failures. These are concrete decisions or non-decisions that contributed to a child's death. Family friend Michael Cambin remembered Lariah. Anytime you take her anywhere, she'd just bring joy. Joy to the party. Just make people smile. That's who Lariah Davis was. A 5-year-old who brought joy, who made people smile, who had her whole life ahead of her. She deserved protection. She deserved safety. She deserved to grow up. Instead, she became another statistic, another child abuse victim, another name on a growing list of children failed by the adults who were supposed to love them. The Cier Wood case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. Athletic talent doesn't equal moral character. Success in sports doesn't predict success in life. And the distance between a celebrated athlete and a convicted murderer can be shorter than we'd like to believe. But this case is ultimately not about Cier Wood. It's about Lariah Davis. She was 5 years old. She loved to bring joy to others. She made people smile. And she suffered unimaginable pain at the hands of people who should have loved her. Remember her name, Lariah Patra Nicole Lamont Davis. Remember her face. Remember her smile. Remember that she deserved better. And remember that child abuse thrives in silence. It happens behind closed doors, in apartments that look just like yours, in families that seem normal from the outside. If you suspect a child is being abused, make the call. Report it. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't convince yourself you're overreacting. Lariah Davis didn't have anyone who made that call in time. Let's make sure the next child does. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to True Crime Zone, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent.